Good evening. For my part in the case study analysis, I was tasked with analyzing the outcomes for the Nike case study. So very briefly, I narrowed it down to about four big main points in regards to outcomes. I'm going to go through them and then I will give some context behind each of them. So basically what this case study entailed was Nike trying to hit the women's market. And what that looked like from an outcome standpoint really pertained to their strategy and what were the results of their strategy. For my analysis, that's what I felt was best to focus on. And so that's why I narrowed it down to four main points. So in the planning process, Nike decided that it would be best to attack this in a three-phased approach to ensure that they would be adequately targeting the women's fitness industry. So for the first outcome, that was probably the one of the most notable ones, was that in Nike's analysis of where they stood combined with what the potential was, they had a realization of a huge business opportunity to break into and also to reap the benefits from by getting into the women's fitness industry. Their target markets that they were trying to pinpoint within that opportunity, within that industry, was dance, cardio, running, walking, swim, cycle, and Pilates. The next point that Nike really focused on and that I noticed in my analysis was that Nike gained a better understanding of their target market, aka the women that enjoyed the fitness industry, and then the women's fitness industry as a whole, as well as the competitors that were currently in the industry, that were in that market, and also in the hunt to be in that market. So as a result of this led to the creation of the idea that would be coined by Nike as their integrating collections. And what that entailed was a series of 6 steps that were going to consist of the following. We have seasonal kickoff and creative design of new products, product ideas, maybe the review of those designs. So, feedback from people within Nike, feedback from any type of studies that they conducted, prototype review. So once they got feedback and from the design, as well as the creativity behind the design, they would initiate the development of a prototype and then review that at that point. The next one was their go-to market strategy. So how they were going to market, how they were going to try to lure the consumers, AKA the women that identified within the fitness industry. Pre-lines, and then lastly, brand execution and post-season review. So this last part was pretty important because that entailed executing and rolling out the rollout phase, if you will, of these different types of products that Nike was going to develop. And then afterward, I think it was pretty beneficial to them that they also utilized a review at the end of their seasonal launch to see how they did and how they performed and what improvements could be made or needed to be made. So another point that's worth noting here is that the specific target groups that were within Nike that they were trying to focus on during this integrated collections idea was hitting the footwear market within female fitness industry, the apparel market, and the equipment, which if you look at it today, that pretty much encompasses the entire industry. And I think that they did a very good job in pinpointing those areas. Lastly, thirdly, the next outcome that I felt was pretty beneficial to Nike as a whole, as an organization, was their organizational makeup as a result from these created ideas and strategies. So basically what happened was once Nike realized the business opportunity, once they gained a better understanding of where they stood against their competitors as well as the target market, they deemed it necessary to create a team of highly intelligent and skilled individuals that were going to lead this charge and lead this plan to, in essence, how they coined it in the case study, change the game. And that basically consisted of creating different roles, different positions within Nike that we're going to specifically address and focus on this specific initiative that was going towards the women's fitness industry. Lastly, and probably the most important one, to kind of sum it up as a whole, the most important outcome that came out of Nike making this approach was that they shifted their mindset and their business model and possibly their philosophy from a product-based orientation to a consumer-based one. And I think that that's so important for them. And if you look at them today too, because every single step that they outlined or that I outlined in my outcomes, it all ties back into the consumer. And I think at the very end, they were able to really understand that. And once they grasped that, they were able to take it and run with it and ultimately create success for the company. So I think that by switching to a consumer based orientation, they were able to not only sustain that level of success, but also from a revenue standpoint, just generate tons of revenue. And later on, the study talks about how each of these approaches did have some success with the exception of a few barriers that came up along the way. But nonetheless, I think that these were for sure some of the biggest outcomes that were presented in the study that were relative to the state of Nike at that time, as well as how they evolved and what their state ended up being at the very end of their so-called, or not so-called, but of their plan to roll into the women's fitness industry. That is pretty much my part in a summary. Thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. And as always, gig 'em.